You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Matthews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
It's 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Yeah. You son of a bitch. Look at that hat.
Hey, how you like that hat? That's I was in your neck of the woods. I was down in Florida at spring training. Got myself a little Detroit Tigers spring training hat.
I love it. I love it.
Hey, you got to be close to spring training with the boys. You got to be close to doing that trip. Maybe 2 years from now.
It isn't at 5 and 3. I'll tell you that.
No. I think maybe at 7 and 5 you might pull it off though.
5 is a little young for
5 still is a pain in the ass. Yeah. Probably 6 or well, you might do Max first, and then Manny maybe do one of the kids. Then when they start to get a little older,
so the thing that I'm excited to do is I'm excited to take Manny, my younger one, to Disney. And my mom is always up for a Disney trip. Like you don't have to do a freaking thing. Talk about once you've stopped, it's hard to start. My mom can start a Disney trip at any moment. But my sister has been pregnant and she was having some complications. So we were really worried about her. And my mom was like, I'm not doing anything. I didn't tell you this. My sister had her baby yesterday, 5 weeks early though. Oh. So they had to have her C-section. Yeah. So the kid's in the NICU. So it's touch and go a little bit, but I talked to my brother last night. Everybody's happy, but spring training, maybe. I think that's definitely going to come is the Disney trip with boys.
Yeah, that's coming. That'll be fun. You'll have a good time with that. But Frankie, we are back. We are just the way you and I treat red wine and dessert and red meat. We go all out or all in. So this is like second podcast of the day that Frank and I are just crushing right away after a year off from podcasting.
We're not telling people that I thought we were trying to hide it. Like we put on some different clothes.
People are absolutely dying. They're begging. They want to know where's Let Me Speak to a Manager. I'm seeing it all over the chat rooms. I'm seeing it on Reddit. I'm seeing it on Twitter. People are saying, where did our favorite podcasters go? Frank found out from a unsolicited solicitation that we are in the top 1% of all business podcasts. Very interesting. We are still getting hundreds of downloads a day, even though we've not recorded in a year. So the people have spoken, Frankie, and they want more content.
Satisfier versus Satisfice is still dominant.
Still dominating. It's one of the greatest podcast episodes. I'll put that up against anything Rogan's ever done other than Schwarzenegger. It's right there. It's right there. It's absolutely fascinating.
Oh yeah.
So Frankie and I have not recorded since May of 2023, and there were a number of reasons. So kind of going back to the beginning, Frank and I started this thing 3 years prior to that, and we kind of said, here's the rules. We're going to do 100 episodes. That was our first kind of what we were going to do. We're going to do 100 episodes.
Based upon how good our math is, we probably just got over that number, even though we're saying 150.
That's not true. We blew way over that thing. So we consistently recorded just about every week. There were some weeks where we would try to record 2 or 3 and get caught up because Frank or I would be traveling, but it was kind of our Wednesday was our set day where we would record and we'd come on and it became a habit, right? Regardless of whatever the hell Frank had going on or I did. And if you listen to our podcast, you see we both have a lot of diversity in the businesses that we are involved in. Things come and go. We were pretty good about Wednesday mornings, like 10 to 1, we were recording a podcast.
10:08.
Yep. Usually Frank was late because he had to pee. But we got pretty good at it. And we got to about 150 episodes and we took no breaks. We do this through the summer, through Christmas, through holidays.
It was grind. It was grind.
It was starting to feel a little bit like work. And we never wanted the podcast to be work. We do this for fun. And so we decided like, hey, look, Frank had a lot going on. I had a lot going on at work. We said, look, let's take a break. And I thought it was going to be about 6 months. I thought we would take a break through the end of the year. And it ended up being a little more than that, probably 9 months. But there's a number of things we want to talk about in this episode today. But one, I think the reason we did it made a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people keep doing things just because of habit when it doesn't serve them in the moment. And I think it was hard for us both to stop it. Like multiple times, Frank and I, one of the two would talk the other one into let's keep doing it. Like there were a few times where Frank was out and I'm like, nah, you're not. And there were a few times where I was like, I don't think we should do it. And you're like, let's not quit because we'll never do it again. Like we won't. We both sort of knew if we stop, it's going to be really hard to start again. And that ended up being the case, right? That ended up like since January, I've been kind of nudging at Frank, like, what do you think? What's going on? And finally, we've got ourselves back onto recording these first episodes, but it was as hard as we thought it was going to be.
They are who we thought they were.
So part of
you remember who said that?
What's that?
That was Dennis Green and getting pissed
Cardinals,
off.
Cardinals after losing to the Bears for sure. Yeah. We'll put it in the show note. We'll put the videos in the show note.
Clearly.
For
they
sure.
Are who we thought they were.
Yep. So, Frankie, we both kind of know this because Frank and I have also been on over 100 start and stop diets and exercise routines over the last 30 years as well. That you get on a roll, you're kicking ass, and everything's great. And then one day you feel like you made it. And you take a week off, screw around, right? And you eat whatever the hell you want. And a week becomes 2 weeks. And 2 weeks becomes 3 weeks. The next thing you know, you're not lifting weights anymore. You're not exercising. Frankie, this is really interesting. So just this year, I really told myself I'm going to get up every day and get back in the gym at 5 a.m. And I haven't had a reason to do that. Part of why I did it this year is I've just gotten incredibly busy with my schedule. It feels almost like Fortune 500 calendar. Just especially January, February, March have been really crazy for me. Lots of things. My calendar is just full every day. And I used to have time to sneak away for a lunch workout or maybe in the evening. I've just been too tired. So I told myself, all right, you're going to go at 5 a.m. But what's weird is I did that for 20 years, Frank. Got up at 5 a.m. and I worked out at 5 a.m. either at a gym or at my house or going for a run. I did that from the time I graduated college at GE all the way to DC through all of my time at MVR. Then I leave NVR to start my own thing, and I have like all the free time in the world. And it's like, why the hell am I getting up at 5 a.m? Like, what is the point? I still have the rest of the day to just look like, why don't I get some more sleep? That's healthy. And since I left MVR, sometimes I could get up real early if I had something going on, but for the most part, it wasn't a habit anymore. And it was hard for me to start that this year. Like I was exhausted those first 2 weeks, getting up consistent. And I'm talking about like 7 days a week, 5 a.m. lifting weights because I was doing that 75 hard thing that we've talked about. It was really challenging to get back into it. But now it would be hard for me to stop. It's become full habit again, where when I miss a 5 a.m., it kind of bugs me throughout the day. Like I'm thinking about why did I miss it? I don't want to go in tonight. Like it's become more like my identity is back of I'm an early morning workout person. Right. And I lost that identity because for like 2 years I had so much free time. I could go for a jog at 11 a.m. I could go to the gym at noon when there's 0 people there and get a great workout in. And so it wasn't that I wasn't exercising. I wasn't a 5 a.m. exercise person. And I'm glad I'm back on that because I just have too much going on to trust my schedule again, which is why I used to do it in the first place.
That all makes sense. For me, I remember thinking this way very early in my career. So I remember, it's a long time ago at this point, it's more than 25 years ago, but I remember waking up for work the first day of work. And I don't really think I slept the night before because I was so afraid I was going to oversleep. Because when you're coming off a college schedule, getting up at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, I don't remember 6 or 6:30, whenever I got up that first day, like that was misery, right? Like, and then I remember I got acclimated to that construction. And what I used to always think about is, okay, if I go into sales, I don't have to be in the model until 11 in the morning. So I don't need to get up at 6 anymore, or 5:30 or whenever I'm getting up. I can get up at 8:30 or 9, and I can sleep a lot later. And I always used to think about, man, if I get promoted back into management, it's going to be so hard to get back into that role, to get up early. And it always is. And like, if you look at it, like as silly as this is, when we adjust the clocks, we're physically all getting up an hour earlier. And what happens to people is that's the period in the year where the most people have heart attacks and strokes. Simply adjusting a calendar by 1 hour, like, takes people down, tons of them. So it's with stress. And when you go back to doing something that you've done before, or you make a change, it's very, very hard. I mean, the number of books that are out there on how do you change something in your life, there's tens of thousands of examples, and a lot of them are bestsellers because it's something that many people want to do. And not only do they want to do it, it's hard to do naturally.
And every self-help book you read, every podcast you listen to on this, changing a habit is at the center of all of the advice that you get on this is you have to lean into discomfort. You got to kind of embrace discomfort. You talking about, well, I'll get up at 8:30. That's comfort. Like, I can, so I will. So I'm going to do something more comfortable.
And you know damn well when if you start sleeping till 8:30 becomes difficult because you're staying up so late watching other crap. Like, you know what I mean? It's just it's like, how do you go from weighing 200 pounds to 250 pounds? It's not overnight. It's day after day after day of doing dumb shit that adds up.
I remember when you left MBR and you were in your first year, right? You went through the same thing. Not enough to do. Like, you can convince yourself that I'm busy, but you don't have enough going on. You don't have enough. There's just not enough to keep you busy. And I remember you would tell me, like, I was up till like 2 a.m. last night watching TV. And I'd be like, how? Like, I was in bed at 9:15, but you're like, yeah, you're still at MBR. Like, you're exhausted when you come home. Like, I had kids, I had other things, but I remember just thinking, like, how in the world? And then I leave NVR and it's like, well, I'm still binging this Netflix show, and it's, 12:30, and I'm up 3 hours later than I ever was when I was working. So some of it is just comfort, and it stretches and becomes much worse, much faster, right? So
Comfort
6 becomes 7, becomes 8, becomes 9.
Comfort can become habitual. And what you have to look at is, so I went through this as well in a different thing. I got comfortable being a certain weight. Like, when I was in high school, I weighed 185, 195 pounds, and I wanted to play bigger. I wanted to have a chance to play in college. And I got all the way up to 225 pounds, and it was untenable. I couldn't move. I was an 18-year-old kid in a 185-year-old body lugging around 225 pounds. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm never going to get this big again. I can't move. Well, I got 35 pounds heavier than that at some point as an adult, but I didn't do it overnight. I did it month over month over month, year over year over year. And then you get to the point where it's like you and I both went on like pretty hardcore physical regimens in the last 90 days or so. And what I started to think about was this. It's like, I need intervention, and I'm going to either take intervention through a pill or a shot, or I have to commit. And the commitment part's the hardest part. You lie to yourself. You're like, oh, I've been committed. And it's like, no, you haven't been committed. You have been simply making up bullshit excuses the whole time. And you've been close, but the difference between close and what it takes, those things are different. And there are certain parts of your life where you hold yourself accountable to that. And there's certain parts of your life where you do not. I hold myself accountable to that at work, but I didn't hold myself to that physically. And it's disappointing. But then the inertia is going, and you're like, well, I'm just this kind of guy. It's like, no, you got to make a change. You got to make a choice to make the change.
And humans are kind of constantly fighting inertia, right? Like, the human brain doesn't want your body to use too much energy, because for millions of years, that's all the brain cared about was, how do we find more energy so we don't die? So conserve it whenever you can. So your human tendency is always going to be to seek comfort and to seek a state of rest. It's not going
humans have been around for millions of years. It's not 2000.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So you're fighting inertia, right? Tendency to do nothing or remain unchanged. That's all inertia is. And I see it. I see it with people all the time that get into bad habits at work, right? It's the salesperson who is absolutely killing it, starts from nothing, builds their way up to where they're a top performer, and then out of the blue, seemingly, their numbers fall off. And when you go dig deeper into it, it's because they quit prospecting, right? It's kind of like, I lost the weight I thought I needed to lose, and now I'm back eating bullshit food again and back into old habits. You go back to rest, right? Because prospecting, like running on a treadmill, is effing hard. And so people think I've made it to some level, but you've never really made it. Like, we're always in some constant, like, to not backtrack, we're always in some constant form of discomfort. And it's really hard to fight inertia. It's once you stop, like, again, Frank and I knew if we stop recording, it's going to be a while. This is not going to be a 3-month thing, 4-month thing. We're going to be down for a while. We might not come back. We might not want to do it. And it's going to, even for now, Frank and I, it was hard for us to get time on our calendar today. We're recording on a Friday. Most companies have holidays on the Friday before Easter. Hardworking guys like Frank and I, we just keep on grinding our asses along.
Besides the roofers that keep tramping through my ceiling,
those guys seem to be working quite hard on a podcast day, of course. But it's not going to be like, Frank and I are going to have to find a time when we record, and it's going to take us 4, 5, 6 weeks to where this feels normal again, and we protect this time. I guarantee we'll be moving it around a little bit because we're not used to having a schedule on a Friday or whenever we do it. It's really hard to get back into the habit until you're, like, for 9 months, you and I have not had the identity of podcasters, right? When you podcast every week, well, I'm a podcaster, but you can't fool your own brain. Like, if you're not podcasting, your brain's like, you're not podcasting right now. So and I think it's like with most things, your brain almost needs your actions to prove it so that it'll start to believe in the identity.
Yeah, I don't know what else to tell you on that. I agree. It's the reason that transitions are hard is because they're hard. It's reasons why there's big businesses around making changes. Like Tony Robbins is a cottage industry he's worth $1 billion, helping people make changes. And his whole thing is, I'm going to help you make a change faster or more immediately or more effectively. But it's hard, and anything you try and do, it's challenging to do so. So I think one of the things that I think is interesting is this. So nobody likes to talk about other people. Like, nobody cares about weight loss or those types of things. But what I think makes sense to me, it makes sense, is to set things up in your own head that makes sense. So if the answer is stop or go, and we all agree that if you're stopped, it's hard to pick back up to go, what's in the middle of those things that you kind of allow yourself? So it's incredibly difficult to be 100% dedicated to something all of the time. So one of the things that I've come up with is I've worked really hard to get back into shape. I'm not done yet, but when I get to the number where I feel comfortable and I take my foot off the gas, because I will, I have a 5 and a 3-year-old. I want to have corn dogs with them. I want to eat ice cream. I want to do certain things, but I don't want to go back to where I was. I don't want to do this again because it's effing miserable. And I'm sick of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself an upper limit, and I'm going to give myself a new upper limit. So what I used to have as an upper limit into the 250 pound range, and that was just it's too high. I have to reset a new calibration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow myself to get into a calibration that makes sense. And I don't know what it is, if it's a day on the calendar, a weeks, a months, or if it's pounds. But I think I'm going to settle at a certain number. And then what I want to know is I am no more than 15 days or 30 days away from my ideal weight, ideal fitness. And Ian and I are both married to women who are incredibly fit. My wife is incredibly fit. So is Ian's wife. We go on vacation and our wives gain a pound, 2 tops. Ian and I gain 10 to 20. And it's just the way we're built, and this is how they're different. But what they do that's different than us is they are mindful while they're gone. I'm not going to eat every single bread basket or 3 of them. I'm going to have a bite or 2. and they calibrate differently because they have a different result. They don't want to have to be 30 days away from their goal weight again. So what it comes down to for me is having these parameters and knowing what my tolerances are on either side and staying honest to those tolerances. Something like going to bed. The easiest way to wake up early is to go to bed early. So if you go to bed at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock during the course of the week and you go out on the weekends and you're up till 3, you can't go to bed Sunday night at 9. It's just impossible. So you have to tighten up your parameters. You have to tighten up how you live. And it becomes something that's systemic. And it kind of sucks because like we'll be asleep before 10 o'clock on a Friday. But the only way that you're getting up early enough to get stuff done and then get the kids is you have to tighten in that window. So these are little things that you can kind of learn that it's easier to not have to do a drastic restart. You're better suited doing a modification than a start. So restart is very hard.
Yeah, it's for me, I need some kind of like positive influence too when I'm trying to change it. I need someone. I normally need some kind of a North Star to kind of get me motivated. And what I like to do is kind of pre-commit. I tell people, like, if I know I'm procrastinating something, if I know that I'm having trouble starting, I like to tell someone that I did something. So I'm going to give you an example of this at work. I've been thinking about, I have Leadership Essentials, Frank, which is a management training class that, we've talked about in this a million times. I built that 4 years ago. It's fully complete and it's a great program. Works well. I can do it in my sleep. It doesn't even require me. It's a video program. But I have a couple of other smaller programs, but I've had in mind a program for people who are about to become a manager, right? Because a few clients have asked me about it. But same, right? When I was in video training class kind of mode where I was building it and I was in design, creative mode, editing mode, man, I was a machine. That's all I was doing for 18. I was just cranking out slide after slide, video after video. I could do a full hour video per month at one point. But then I stopped, right? And now I'm teaching classes. I'm in a different mode. Getting back into building that program, I've been thinking about it for like 2 years. I need another program. I need this program for people before they're managers. I knew the name of it, Rising Leaders. I knew I had the outline, but the building of it, I couldn't get back into that mode, Frankie. It was inertia, right? I had stopped building new products and I was in marketing mode and I was in execution mode, which is fine, right? Like you got to do that. But I also knew to kind of build an even bigger business, I need multiple products in this library. And so what I did, I took one of my clients and I said, what do you think about this? And I sent him an outline. And I said, this would be for people who you've not promoted, but have a lot of bandwidth and have a high ceiling. See, these are people that we're going to teach how to lead before they have the title. And he was like, I love that. Let me run it by our regionals. Ran it by him. And I said, okay, how many do you think you could have? He came back and he said, I could have 15 to 20. I gave him a price point. And he said, that's reasonable. And I said, okay, let's start at January. This was like October. I had no product, no program, nothing. And I committed and I took a check. I sent him an invoice. So talk about motivation if you're stuck. And
I've done something exactly like this in the past. And this is what everybody who teaches online marketing does. It's like get leverage, find an audience first, sell the product second, build it third.
And so I've been building this product for the last 3 months every week as I go. And it's a lot of late nights. It's a lot of like, holy shit, Tuesday's coming again, like every week. Now I've put a lot of effort into it and it's a lot of heavy lifting. It's a lot of, I'm kind of muscling my way through it a little bit. But by the end of this class, and I'll be done with it in another 4 weeks, I have all the material. I have all the emails set. I have everything. Now, if I want to automate it and build it into a video program, I can do that. But I had to commit myself or I was going to keep procrastinating something I really wanted to do and that I know I needed to do. And I'll give you one more example of this. I was also wanting to build a sales class. Well, best way to do it again, I got called from someone, an old friend who's a manager at another home builder, and asked me if I would do a keynote for their sales force. And I did not want to do it. Frankie, I did not like,
You and I talked about it.
you know how I'm wired? Like, I don't get up in front of groups willy-nilly. Like, I put tens and dozens of hours into preparing before I go and get in front of someone. And I was like, I don't have time for that. I have too much going on. But in the back of my head, I was also like, take the check, right? That's paying you and forcing your accountability to go build part of that sales class that you know you need to do. And it's the smartest thing I could do. It stressed the shit out of me for 2 months, but it got me halfway through the product now already, and I got paid to pretty much for R&D. And so one of the ways that I always do it, and I'll go right back to, if I want to diet, I'll tell my family, if you see me in the pantry, kick me out and I'll give you $20. Kick my ass. This is what I'm doing. Here's, I'm doing this exercise routine. This is what you can expect of me. So when I'm not doing it, people are like, what happened to that? I thought you were going to get up at 5 a.m. every day. What's going on, Dad? Weren't you supposed to be exercising? Dad, I thought you weren't supposed to be eating cheesecake. Dad, I thought you weren't supposed to be drinking beer this month. That's right. If you commit and you tell people what you're doing, but usually when I fail, it's because I have a goal in my head and I'm not told anyone. And so, here's Frankie and I recording again. We've kind of broken through the inertia. We've figured it out. Now what's going to be interesting is, how do we hold ourselves accountable to keep recording every week and get the podcast back up and going, so we can go from top 1% of business podcasts to top 1% of 1%. Does that even make sense? I'm not sure that makes sense. Does 1% of 1% make money? Because top 1% does not, loyal listeners. It's just a cost center.
So I've never been good at math. So what I'll say is this:
coordinators.
So and that's actually very inaccurate if you know me, but I'm moving on. So what you're probably hearing, and what I'm hearing and hearing Ian talk about this sounds very, very similar to setting goals. When you set a goal, it's called SMART is the acronym you use. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, and it's time-based. That's for a goal. When you've already done something, you can start with a goal, or you could actually get to a point where it's actually a little bit even easier. You need to acknowledge. So when you want to restart, you acknowledge the challenge, which is how Ian explained, talking about it, talking to people, those types of things. Break it into components. I'm going to spend X number of minutes. I'm going to get up at this time. I'm going to do these things. You break it down into small bite-sized things. And then you find inspiration, or you find leverage, right? Leverage is telling your kids, hey, fat ass, stop eating the cheesecake, which gets really annoying when your wife or your kids tell you that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm getting to the point where it's like, I got 3 know-it-alls in my house telling me what to do. It's awful. So it's like, you don't want to hear that stuff. So it's either inspiration, the carrot, stick is getting the leverage where someone has something over you. But those are the things. And the other thing that I think is really interesting about this is, if you want to go full bore on this, you can, but you can also build some momentum steps. I'm going to try this for 30 days. I'm going to try this for a month. I'm going to try this for a couple of weeks. You do know with almost everything that you do, though, it's hard for that first couple of weeks. Like when I start a new diet, I usually have a headache. It's awful. So in eating my vitamins, I just take to a leave for the first week because I'm going to have a headache and I just don't want to have to deal with it. So it's like you build little things into your program that allow you to kind of get through that grind and then get you some momentum. And then the thing that we didn't really talk about that I think is actually really important is build in a win. Build in a win pretty early, right? Like 30 days in, you do something fun. You do something you couldn't have done 30 days before, whether it's take a picture in something, have an event to go to, get on stage and present something. Like, have something where at the end of it, it's like, this feels pretty great. And then what I like to do is remind myself when I've restarted something, what are the rewards? What are the reasons for it? Do I want to continue to commit to this? Do I want this to become something that is just inertia and I just do it because I used to do it? Or do I want to continue to do it? So you have to be, the really hard part with goal setting and then giving like incentives for others is it requires measurement and it requires follow-up. And it's the same with yourself. If you just keep doing what you've done because you've always done it, you're going to get stale and tired. But if you reset new calibrations to it, those are things that are really fun. Like, so what do you feel like if you're trying to lose weight by the end of March? That's very different for July 4th. I have a very different set of goals that I want to accomplish by the 4th of July. And I'm excited for pool season this year because I'm not going to feel like shit when I go to the pool and take my shirt off. Like, I'm excited about it. But I know I've got to show up for the next 3 months until July 4th when I'm at the beach, and I'm going to feel great. But you got to, so you got to constantly keep that in front of yourself or you're going to fall off.
And so the other side of taking a break, even though it's hard to restart, the other side of it is
renews energy.
Can really recharge you. So it's baseball season, right? Baseball season, it's always kind of fun. Opening day, see how your team's going to be, you go do some research. And usually by the end of baseball season, you don't care unless your team's great, right? But at the beginning, opening day is one of the best times of the year because it's a new season. Football's over, basketball's kind of over.
Everybody's excited about it because you're not on game 150.
Everything's exciting. It's the same even with coaching,
That's
Frankie.
right.
You're going to see this. Like by October of last year, I was like, why are we still playing baseball? I've been doing this since March. I'm tired of coaching these kids. I don't want to, and same with IJ. He was like, I'm ready to play some basketball, Dad. I'm ready to go do something else. But now it's March and April. We just won our first tournament. It was awesome. I'm fired up to coach again because the break re-energized me and got me ready. And that's, Frank and I are hopeful that a nice break would make us miss this a little bit and get excited and, get back on each other's schedule. And I'll tell you this has been one of the biggest challenges, Frankie, with our tech company is with a tech company. And there's like different seasons, right? Where like we're marketing, let's get them out to people. Okay, there's some issues. We got to get back in engineering. Let's not sell for a while. And then we pause, right? And like David, who's our founder, he's always kind of saying like, man, I can't even think about that right now. I'm in engineering mode because there's only so much of your mind that can be on like creative mode or building mode or execution. And it's been a challenge even for me because I'll be like balls to the wall, making videos, responding to comments on all of our social media, trying to close deals. And then it's like, all right, we got to pause. And so then I go spend time on my other businesses. And then it's like, okay, we feel like let's get back to marketing. It's hard to get back into it because that side of my brain just had stopped working and I'm focused on other things.
I want to jump in on this and talk about this in two different ways. I think there's two things. First is this. It's impossible to go 100% all of the time in a direction, right? And I'll give two examples of this. Every person in sports has an off season. They do. They all have an off season. And part of what comes into it now, we talk about this a lot more than we used to. When we were kids, it was just grind, do this, do this, do this. Now there's a word called recovery that every single person talks about. And the only way you can go forward is if you pull back a little bit to go forward again. And I remember reading an article back when Sports Illustrated came in print copy years ago. And it was about Eddie George, the running back who's now in the Hall of Fame. And he got an inordinate amount of crap from other players in the NFL because he took some pictures off season and he wasn't shredded. He had a little bit of a gut, like an Eddie George gut while he's in playing mode. Like he just didn't have an 8-pack. He probably had a 4-pack. Like for all of us, we would dream to be this out of shape. But the point is, he got a bunch of grief for it. And he goes, I'm off season. I can't be peak in season if I'm peak off season. Yeah. And the other thing that happens that I think about a lot is this is where there's a big thing around athletes and kids. We've started to raise specialists, and kids that play nothing but baseball or nothing but a particular sport burn out. They get tennis elbow. They throw out their arm. Something happens because the kids that have longevity have had diversity around their body. They have cross-trained with 4 sports, not just one. And we've gotten into this post-Tiger Woods era where I'm going to do one thing from when I'm 3 until when I'm older. And you can't do that because your body just doesn't allow for it. Neither does your psyche. Stepping back and being reflective and contemplative can only happen if you step away from something and look at it. The second example I'm going to use in this is inside of my marriage. I never love my wife more than when both of us go away. It's not that we do something terrible while we're gone. We do the opposite. We miss each other. We take each other for granted. We're in the same space every single day. But 4 days without me to help with the kids or her to help with the kids, it crystallizes how important that person is to your family element. And they come back and you give them a huge hug and a huge kiss because you miss them and you love them because you had that break. So forcing breaks is so critically important. And if you have a certain goal, you have to kind of calibrate with, here's a celebration point where we're going to pull back and stop, and then we will go again. And in so doing, it's kind of accidental here, but that's what we did. We kind of were looking forward to this when it was not the case before we stopped.
And in most of these cases we're talking about, it's really just hard to do it on your own. So, I mean, I think my closing summary on this is just, you might be able to be solely independent to restart yourself on everything. You would be an anomaly. Most humans, we're all social creatures. We all rely on the pack. It's not a sign of weakness that you need someone to help hold you accountable, whoever it might be. It could be a friend. It could be a family member. It could be a manager that you're asking. It could be, like I just mentioned, a client who you take money from, and then you got to go scramble to get some shit done. I had multiple situations like that happen in the first half of this year. There's no shame in getting someone to help hold you accountable, right? And if you got to pay for a coach to do it, shit, do that. Like, find someone that will call your shit out on all the bullshit excuses you're using on why you're not restarting again, because most of them are just bullshit excuses. That's all they are.
That's it. However, I don't think there's much more to say. You got to get leverage over yourself to do this, whether it's a coach or something along those lines, if you really want to achieve something. The other side of it is this: if you make a decision to not start back up, that's okay too. The only way you can do new things is letting some things go from the past. But if you do decide to come back to something with an open, like let's say I quit, but I want to go back there. Like you and I have a mentor at NVR who quit and went to Florida for 4 or 5 years, and he worked there and he thought he would never work at NVR again. He went there, he was in Florida, and he picked up and goes, I'm going back to NVR. He quit, he got fresh perspective, and he did something again. Perfectly fine. He could have, you and I have left. I don't think we're going back. But that's the whole point, is you get to make a new set of decisions when you get there, but make sure the fact you don't lose sight of you're in control of that. And it's up to you to pick and choose.
Yep. Loyal listeners, we're glad to be back with you. If you liked this, make sure you give us a 5-star review and put something in the comments saying you're happy we're back, so we don't quit again and our feelings get hurt that no one listened to this goddamn episode. Frankie, it is always good to see you, even though you are 30 pounds lighter, leaner, meaner, and boy, do you look sharp.
Thank you so much, and I got to pee, but I'll talk to you in a second. For those of you, I'll see you next week.
Peace. If you like what you just heard, and judging by the viewership numbers, you did, hit that follow button and leave us a 5-star review. It helps other people find the show. And it lets Frankie and I know that, a few people are listening to this.